and we're at Pumpkin Hill. You ready? I ain't gon' let it get to me. I'm just gon' creep down in Pumpkin Hill. I got to find my lost piece. I know that it's here. I can sense it in my feet. The great emerald's power allows me to feel. I can't see a thing.
Hello, welcome to episode 4 of All of the Day. Setzer's back this week. He came back from the wilderness. Hello, Setzer.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging me. Also with us again this week is Chesten. Hello.
Hi there.
So 3-man power trip. So we'll see how it goes. How have you guys been?
You know, I'm a little sunburnt. I'm a little crispy, but other than that, very unvideo gamed this week.
Well, we're glad to have you back, regardless. What about you, Chesten? How have you been?
I'm crispy for a different reason. It's 1,000,000 degrees out here.
Tell me about it.
And it feels like about every day, you know, I've been back at work this week, and part of my job involves, for a few times a day, being outside for as much as 5 to 10 minutes at a time, and it's darn near an eternity being out there.
Well, yeah, it's been about 100 degrees where we live this week, and it's been torture. My evaporative cooler broke again for like the 80,000th time, and as a result, I've been sweltering. But luckily, it got fixed. So I'm just a little broke, but other than that, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I was thinking about you the other day when it broke 101. I know it was the day that you said you were getting it fixed. And I was like, well, I hope he got it fixed, because if not, we might not hear from him tomorrow.
No, well, I mean, it was 95 in our house the day before that. It was brutal.
Did you just have a fan planted by you all day?
Yeah, pretty much. And our room still has like an AC unit, so luckily we didn't die if we're in there. But if I want to play any video games, it is brutal. I have an overhead fan which barely does anything, and that's the worst.
Better yet, you could have reenacted the old Sears commercial. Just put your head in the fridge.
Well, I did try to reenact from the Sears commercial, but my wife did not understand it, so it's just dead silence. Very unfortunate.
Another scorcher.
I know. Better call today.
You'll call now.
I'll call now. I know Setzer did not play any games this week, being out in the great outdoors. But what about you, Cheston? Did you play anything?
The only thing that I think is of any interest or note to anybody, and by anybody I mean perhaps you, Derek, and maybe Setzer from a sartorial perspective.
All right, enough of your big teacher words.
Well, I think I used it wrong. so what a great teacher I am. I think sartorial is a fashion word. But anyways, the point is, I was playing Pokemon Shield this week. Was probably the main focus point of my gaming time. And I mentioned it last week, but I didn't want to say much about it because I had restarted from the beginning fairly recently after letting it lapse late last year out of boredom, and then I came back to it a few weeks ago just out of a desire to, 1, comb through my backlog, and 2, play something without buying anything because I bought a house, so I have no money. And I wanted to wait to let my feelings play out, and I think at this point I'm pretty decided on how I feel about Pokemon Shield.
Is your feelings the same as mine? Is that it should have been put in the oven for about a year longer?
Yes, it is a very conflicted feeling of liking a lot of things about it, specifically the changes made to the gym battles, so making them, I think, pretty memorable with the different challenges and just the presentation of the actual confrontation with the gym leader. I mean, there's been, 7, 8 generations at this point. At this point, I can't remember half of the gym leaders I fought, but each of these has been pretty memorable just because of the way it's laid out. And I think a lot of the monster designs are pretty cool, and the gameplay itself is smoother than ever, but it's so bare bones around every other corner between the graphics in the wild area, which were subject of a lot of internet humor when the game was leading up to its launch, and just the nature of the campaign, which Pokemon has been pretty linear for a few generations now, but this one is literally like line after line after line, just straight lines funneling you from gym to gym to gym. And it feels like because of that, it's really missing something. It doesn't feel really like an adventure as much as it does more like a theme park where they're just trying to take you to the next exciting gym battle. And then at the end, I assume they'll spit you out and there won't be much of an end game and they'll just be like, all right, see you later. See you next time. So it's conflicting.
You know, you say linear for a few generations. I think you mean linear for every generation. It's
I,
never been
no,
not linear.
well, I mean to some extent, but I
They
think
did a better job of hiding it.
Yes,
yeah, they
I'll agree with
did.
that.
Like you think about the original map, like of the original game or even the second generation, you got a lot of ways that they would make you go, oh no, you have to go back here and then you go around here. I mean, it was a linear track. It's not like Breath of the Wild. You couldn't choose where to go at any point and which gym leader to fight, but it wasn't literally a line. I think Black and White was really the first generation where it felt like, this is just like corridor after corridor after corridor, and I like a lot of things about this game, but it does feel like it just kind of didn't spend a lot of time on that aspect.
Why'd you buy this game? As someone who hasn't played Pokemon in a long time, like what keeps you coming back?
I would say that I think every Pokemon since the last one I actually finished and really, really liked, Let's Go Aside, which I did like, was Black and White. To me, that seemed like the last Pokemon game that was really interesting in a lot of ways. I liked that it limited you to that generation's Pokemon, and you weren't having the same Generation One or Generation Two characters in your party. It was exploring this really new world, even though it was linear. And the last few, the reason I've continued to play it, even though I haven't finished any of them since Black and White, is that each time when they debut it and they show the previews and stuff, they always do such a good job of selling you on this new region being this great new adventure. Like I think about Sun and Moon when they debuted that, and it's like, oh, it's an island adventure. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a neat setting for a Pokemon game, and it seemed like it'd be a new type of setting, a tropical island with a totally different vibe than previous games. But then you play it and it's kind of dry and dull, and like Shield is very linear. And the same thing with Shield, it was seeing the previews, it was like, okay, this is an adventure in a Pokemon world based on the UK. It's going to have soccer stadiums because that's such a popular sport in Europe, and there's curry because that is a popular cuisine in that part of the world. And so you think it's going to be this nice adventure in this new world. You're going to explore all these nooks and crannies. And then you get it and you find out that it's really not that. So it's continually fooled by the pre-release footage. And then I get it and I'm inevitably disappointed. But again, I do like things about it.
So you're more of like a dabbler, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I stick around. If you mean like, do I stick around for in-game content or
Yeah.
play competitively? No, I tend to play for the adventure. I get my new starter, I have a crazy new party. I go through the Elite Four or the equivalent, and then once that's out, I'm typically done, other than maybe catching the legendaries.
See, my wife's the same way, and it really does fascinate me because she has a lot of the same complaints about these games, but she keeps buying them and she keeps playing them. But would you say that these are bad games?
I wouldn't say bad because there are enough things about them that are compelling. Like, I mean, I think the core system at the heart of the game is still very solid. So for
Hmm.
that alone, I wouldn't call it bad, but I know people hate the word, but I would say a lot of times these recent games do feel a little lazy in certain respects. And I think this one in particular, I told Derek this week, this is like when a new console comes out and EA Sports has their new Madden game, and it's the same Madden game as was released the year before, but they've taken out a billion other features because, well, it's on a new platform, so it takes a lot of time to really make these graphics shine and make that sweat really feel like it's dripping off of your body.
It's
And it's kind of
glistening.
the same with this Pokemon. It's like, oh, the transition of the Switch, it's really taxing on our designers, and we don't have time to design levels that are interesting at all. We can just put in the core mechanics, maybe shine up the models a little bit, and there you go. That's kind of what it feels like to me.
Well, I think a problem is that Nintendo is trying to make Pokemon a yearly sort of franchise. They're trying to go like the Assassin's Creed route with it, and because of that, Sword and Shield, I very much enjoyed it, but it felt extremely rushed. It felt like this was a good proof of concept, something that you could build on for the future. But boy, howdy, did it need some more time. Like if it had been released this year with an extra year, I think you probably have an argument for Sword and Shield being the best generation of Pokemon. Because I really do enjoy the wild area, and I think the story is interesting for a Pokemon game. But because they decided that like we need to have one this year, we need it for Christmas, we need those little kitties happy, I think it suffers. I feel like it's a shell of what it could have been, which is a shame.
And speaking to what Setzer said about his wife being into these games and continuing to buy them, even though she has similar complaints to what I've voiced, when you say those things, my instant reaction is, well, next time they'll have a little more time. They won't be transitioning to a new platform. Presumably, they'll be doing the next generation on the Switch as well. And I'll be sitting there in the debut trailer when they're like, oh, it's like playing a Pokemon adventure, but this time it's like Antarctica. And then I'm going to get it. I'm going to be like, wait a minute. I've been tricked again. I've been had.
Well, for the fourth week in a row, I'm going to make fun of journalists here, so bear with me.
Uh-oh.
But I feel like a lot of people were calling it half-baked when it came out, and as a result, I feel like people in the press had to attack Pokemon fans for saying that. A lot of these criticisms were left out of reviews and whatnot. Because I believe Sword and Shield reviewed very well, but because there was such an outcry by the fan base against it, I feel like, I don't know, reviewers felt the need to carry water for it. And I don't see why a Game Freak would feel the need to change anything, because critically it was a success, commercially it was a mega success. So why change anything?
Yeah, you're right, and I think I don't want to belabor the point because you said we've mentioned it 4 weeks in a row now, but I was thinking about it this week as I knew I was going to talk about this game, and I was thinking about the reaction from the press because, like you said, I remember reviews saying best Pokemon ever. I even read one that was like this glowing piece, and I just couldn't imagine that it was describing the same game that I had played. And I think it's one of those things where, the reaction from fans to this game, there were a lot of very mild reactions, but the very extreme reactions, the Dexit reaction, you had these people who had some very legitimate complaints in some cases, but they took it a little too far. And it reminded me of a situation, the relationship between the press and these types of fan reactions is very much like drawing on my professional background. It's like when you have a teacher and you have their students. And there are a lot of teachers who are conditioned to, because they are the experts in their subject area, if a student complains about something, the teacher, in some cases, is oriented to say, like, well, I'm the expert, so I know best. They're obviously irrational and silly because they're young people. And those are usually not the best teachers. Whereas what you want from a teacher is a balanced reaction, where if they hear someone in the class complaining, they might say, oh, in this circumstance, I recognize what they're saying, and maybe they have something to say, maybe they have some valid points, and also differentiating when they don't make valid points. A good teacher can see the difference, and I think the relationship right now between press and their fans is very much like the bad teacher, the scolding teacher, where it's like any time that the fans complain about something, it immediately goes back to that Mass Effect 3 entitled, oh, well, they don't like this game. Their reasons must be irrational because I don't like the tenor of their voice. And because of that, they just throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? They just say, well, because they are so volatile in this and that way, there's nothing wrong with this game. It's the best Pokemon I've ever played. There's nothing to see here.
Well, here's the deal. Pokemon is straight up like Nintendo's best-selling franchise. It is a legitimate like $100 million franchise.
I think it's the biggest IP in the world at this point, actually.
Yes. There is no excuse for a Pokemon game to come out and feel unpolished. But Sword and Shield felt extremely unpolished.
Yes.
So imagine if like the next Mario game came out and it felt like Sword and Shield feels like. Would there be the same kind of forgiveness? I don't think so. Be like, what the fuck are you doing, Nintendo? This is Mario. But for whatever reason, Pokemon gets that pass. Is it
Well,
because it's like strictly a kids game? I don't know, but
I think we'll get to that. That very discussion a little bit later, Derek.
well, okay. So Pokemon, that all you've been playing?
I've been told I'm not to talk about Clubhouse games.
I
So,
did not say that.
well,
Uh,
I mean, my wife was very disappointed that I didn't go into all of our different president stories. I don't want to break her heart, but I also don't want to break yours, Derek. So I'm gonna abstain from any further discussion of Clubhouse games and the many card games therein.
this is slander. I said no such thing. But since you are ceding the floor, I guess I'll go ahead. I have played exactly one game this week, and it was Grand Theft Auto 5. As Setzer was saying, total dad game still. But I am officially done with Grand Theft Auto and probably Rockstar games for a while. They start to wear on you. My feelings about this one are that it really should have been a one protagonist game instead of three protagonists. I think Trevor and Franklin are pretty poor main characters. Trevor basically should not be anywhere near a leading role. He's just an insane person. It would be like if you're making another Dragon Ball series and you put Krillin in the lead. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Franklin is okay. Yes, I know.
I really was thinking you were gonna say something, make a joke about the Joker movie, and then you swerved me with a Krillin reference.
Well, you know how I be. Franklin's just a blank slate. He's basically just nobody. He doesn't have much of a personality. He just wants to learn under Michael. So you have one character that's the main character that you care about, and then that's it. I think from a gameplay perspective, Grand Theft Auto 5 plays probably better than any of the other ones. The gunplay and the driving are all pretty solid. The city is beautiful. I cannot say enough about how pretty San Andreas as a state is. But because I feel like the writing and the characterization are off, and that's what people come to Rockstar Games for, I find myself less enamored with GTA 5 than I do with the others. It sure is a one hell of a cash cow for Rockstar, but I do not give a shit about multiplayer or multiplayer games. So that's good for them, but not for me.
I can tell you, as someone who played that game when it came out, probably was it 7 years ago now. I do not remember just about anything from that game story wise, and like you said, that is why you come to those games. And I can tell you details from San Andreas and Vice City, and gosh, even three of all games. But I cannot tell you one thing about five besides the fact that there's a torture scene, and at one point you get to choose to break into a bank with a giant drill. And
Yes.
that is about all I remember about that game.
The torture scene is so bad. I don't care. I don't remember what people said about it at the time, but
They
it
weren't
feels
fans.
they weren't fans.
No, it was not well received.
Good, because it is so embarrassing. It feels like they're trying so hard to make you feel something. Boy, do I hate that scene.
That's not. It's a really bad scene, and like the having to play it. I know that's why they did it like that. But man,
They want the
cringy.
player to feel something, but because they're having Trevor be the person to carry out these actions, it'd be one thing if this was happening to a leading character, like this is someone you've controlled, so seeing them tortured kind of sucks. But it's just you torturing some guy, and it sucks. I think a torture scene that's better than this is pulled off in Yakuza 0, where they torture Goro Majima. Surprise, I'm shilling for a Japanese game. But they're actually torturing a character you care about. So when it's brutal and over the top, you have a reason to be concerned. When it's brutal and over the top in GTA 5 against a character you don't give a shit about, you just don't give a shit. It's like, well, okay, can we just skip this and get back to robbing cars and stuff? That's terrible. I'm glad to be done with GTA. It was a fun ride, but boy, I'm just ready to move on.
Yeah, good for you powering through that series in succession. As much as I have enjoyed those games in the past, I don't think I could play more than one in a year's time. It is a lot. They are all such big commitments.
Well, they don't start becoming a commitment until GTA San Andreas, when it's just that's the first quote unquote modern Rockstar game.
I have to wonder how much marathoning those games impacts your enjoyment or your at least your perception of them. You played them all. How long did it take you to marathon them all?
Well, it took me a couple of months, but let me say that I split it up. After San Andreas, I played something else, and after GTA 4, I played something else. So that way I could kind of not feel worn out.
Yeah, but those games, naturally, I mean, I think you've condensed about 20 years of video games into 2 months. So did you play those games when they first came out?
Yes.
How is your perception of them now different from when you first played them?
Basically unchanged, except for I appreciate Grand Theft Auto 4 a lot more than I did back in the day. That's the only difference.
So maybe it didn't have that big an impact.
Maybe not. I don't know. I get tired of the same sort of gameplay after a bunch of hours. I feel like I spent probably 80 hours or so with the GTA franchise these past couple months, and that's just a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. We talked about Final Fantasy 12 a few weeks ago, and that game is definitely grating on me. I did play a little bit more of it before I left for vacation, and it does feel very samey after a while, and it does kind of sap your enjoyment of a game and apparently a franchise.
Well, no matter how like good a game plays, if you've been playing the same thing for like 100 hours, it's gonna wear on you. Unless you're just totally hopelessly addicted, like people that are putting 400 plus hours in the Rocket League. Shout out to our other brother.
It's far more than 400 at this point. He was in town, and I snuck onto his Steam profile, and it was a truly appalling number.
It's like when Dad logged into my World of Warcraft account, and he was just completely disappointed that it was like 12 days or something crazy to him. He was like, "You wasted all this time. You could have done something productive." And he's right.
That does beg the question, what makes those games so different from single-player, story-driven games like Grand Theft Auto, even if they are a sandbox game where, the onus is kind of on the player to make that kind of variety. Games like Warframe, World of Warcraft, of course, Rocket League, you see people put thousands of hours into those games, and it's only then that they start to complain, right?
I feel like it's a constant goal for something new. Like you always have that next piece of loot or that next piece of gear to like make like the brag. And with Grand Theft Auto, once you finish a story, it's up to you to decide whether you want to experience more, which I never do. I don't enjoy like collecting 50 random knickknacks. But for MMOs, like it is kind of cool getting that epic weapon you've worked 50 hours for. So I get that.
I think speaking for our brother, because I know he played Rocket League while he was here, I would wake up at night to feed the baby, and I would stumble into my kitchen, and he'd be up late at night playing Rocket League. But for him, I perceived that it was very much just a social thing at that point, in the same way that one might play cards with their wife at night and wish to talk about it on a podcast. He just had some excuse to hang out with his friends, play Rocket League, and I kind of remember my time in World of Warcraft. I've played off and on a few times over the past 2 decades that game's been out, but the time where it was most hot and heavy, so to speak, was when I had friends playing that game actively, because it was just instead of hanging out in Facebook chat or texting or whatever, we'd run Uldaman for whatever godforsaken reason.
Well, I think we're done with what we've been playing, so let's get on to some news here. First, we have finally we get to see some more of the Project X, Series X, whatever the hell you want to call it, on July 23rd. We're finally revealing probably some specs, some games. Rumor is they won't reveal a price point or a release date, but they're going to reveal some stuff. How do you feel?
Hot take.
Yeah.
Halo Infinite is the only relevant game that they have to show off. I think Halo Infinite is going to be make or break for the console generation, and I don't think anybody really gives that big a shit about Forza or Fable. Those are the other two big ones. I mean, what else are they really kind of alluding to?
My wife's going to have a bone to pick with you about the Fable thing.
Let's put it this way. I don't want to hear it from someone who loves Dragon Age. Hashtag hot takes.
Very fair.
That
Don't
one
tell her I said that,
stings.
though. Don't tell her I said that until she listens to me say that.
Oh yeah, then she'll be like, "Oh, he's off the Christmas list that we don't have." I don't know if I agree, just because I feel like since they have a lot of studios working on things that we don't know about, they could pull something out. Like if they resurrected a Rare franchise, like we talked about last week, me and Chesten did anyway. how Banjo and Perfect Dark were potentially coming back. I don't.
But we did not talk about Banjo.
No Banjo. Sorry, Banjo
Did
was
we?
wishful thinking. No, no,
Well,
it
well, I
was.
think you mentioned the idea that people just float because it's a Rare franchise they loved as kids. So
Yes,
every Microsoft conference they say, oh, I think, rumor is Banjo 3 for real this time. I swear.
it was Fable and Perfect Dark. And
It
Fable's
was,
not a Rare
yes.
franchise.
I'm gonna be honest with you though. I see your point. I think I think that's fair game that there could be some surprises. I think FPS games drive a lot of sales and a lot of hype these days. Racing sims, a little more niche. Puzzle platformers, a little more retro. Perfect Dark, also an FPS, but more of a, shall we say, retro take on the genre, right?
Bad.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I feel like for console launch, you need like a good plethora of games. Well, that's why you always see like the stupid
Oh yeah.
racing game that they have, that they always like, oh, look at these fancy new graphics. Buy Need for Speed and be disappointed. Or they always have the sports game. So you need like a big collection of genres because, yes, shooters are what most people play, but you have idiots like me that are like, well, I don't give a shit about shooters. Got to sell me on something. So for people like us, they're like, all right, well, here's a new Conquer or something, or we have all these new studios that we purchased. Here's what they've been working on. So I feel like you're gonna get like an assortment of things.
I think
I'm
I think
sure.
a big thing for them is going to be not just Halo. I'm a little bit in the middle. Surprise, surprise. I can see Setzer's point about Halo Infinite because that's really the only thing they've talked about with this system is it is launching with Halo Infinite, which isn't even exclusive to the platform either. So this game is going to have to be very impressive for people to justify buying an entire new platform. But besides that, you think about, you mentioned all these different studios. If they can have these different studios with compelling games and not, I think Ninja Theory had that multiplayer shooter that everybody's already forgotten about, and both of you probably have no idea what I'm talking about.
You're right, I
Bleeding Edge,
don't.
Bleeding Edge, which was a console exclusive, I believe, that was like a Overwatch style hero shooter with a really terrible art style and sense of fashion and all of that. And that kind of stuff, that's not going to move the needle. But if they have some higher quality stuff, say Obsidian has something very neat that they're working on, and they can say all of this is going to be on Game Pass, so you can buy this platform and you can get a Game Pass subscription for what is it, 10, $15 a month, and you'll have access to these games, all of them day one, played in their best capability on Series X, especially now that we know the odds are that a lot of games are going to be $70. I think that could help move the needle if they really make a good pitch for this platform and Game Pass offering all these experiences for a lower price.
Oh,
I'm picking up what you're putting down, but let me put it this way. Do you do you think Banjo Kazooie as a franchise has the life left in it or the potential for revival that's gonna sell consoles in
only on
2020?
Nintendo.
No, but I want it to. Doesn't that count for something?
The people
No.
that are into Banjo do not own Xboxes. They own Switches. So if you're gonna revive Banjo, that's where it should be.
Okay. Do you feel any differently about Fable?
No, I think the Microsoft, we discussed last week that the Microsoft first party stuff is very much, it is lacking, especially in this recent console generation. It's all very games that just by nature, Halo 5, Crackdown 3, you just feel dated in some way, shape, or form. So I'm
So
thinking these other studios is who I'm referring to when I say having a convincing Game Pass lineup. Like Obsidian, I would hope they wouldn't say, okay, Obsidian, we brought you in. Have you heard of Mad Dash Racers? Like, if that happened, yeah, I don't think anything would come of it. But I'd like to think they'd bring in these studios to bring their particular je ne sais quoi to the platform.
I'm not as optimistic as you are about Microsoft's ability to leverage smaller studio talent.
Oh, I'm not either. They've
Um,
bungled
Oh, I
everything
didn't.
in the
I don't.
past.
I hope I didn't give the impression of optimism because I'm not at all. Like I
But I want to at
said,
least see what they're doing.
well,
yeah,
let me rephrase that. Maybe the
I'll give them a
importance
chance.
of small studio talent. I think that it is important in the long run, but I think you've seen the proof's in the pudding, right? Sony makes much better use of that talent, And I'm not so sure that Microsoft can drive that talent in a way that drives hype for their console.
Well, with Platinum, when they worked together on Scalebound, they showed that they micromanage way too much, and that is going to get in their way with all these little studios. They're not going to be able to perform like their own artistic vision. They're going to do
Well,
whatever suits a Microsoft one.
and they really know how to do one thing and appeal to one market. Most of their games that have been successful have appealed to a very basic, shooter fan of some sort. You have a very, very specific demographic, and they don't, Scalebound is something that was way outside of their wheelhouse, and they looked at that game and saw its very Eastern influences and probably just immediately like recoiled in fear. What is this garbage you put on your platform? Why don't any of these characters have British accents?
But
See,
I want to give them the benefit of the doubt just because they're behind and they need to catch up. They need something, so they got to change something if they want to be a viable competitor to the PS5. So I feel like they might be willing to change a little bit, but that's totally optimistic.
well, that's why I think Halo is the, biggest piece of the puzzle. I think that franchise is why people buy Xbox. It's why they bought the OG Xbox. I think it's, why they stuck with the Xbox One. And I think people who stuck with the Xbox One are going to be the ones who buy the Xbox Series X. As a matter of course, I think that, like you said, Xbox is behind, and there's not really a built-in audience for it anymore in the same way that there is for PlayStation, which is kind of the de facto console in a way that the Xbox 360 was, and the Xbox One was most certainly not.
Well, I will say I own an Xbox One X, and it is my favorite current console, but it's because I really enjoy the backwards compatibility suite, and you're not going to win. If your main selling point is backwards compatibility, you're not going to win.
Exactly.
Even though it's really
And
cool.
and it's worth noting that winning our hearts and minds is like the worst thing a
You don't
business
want to.
can do.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to appeal to
Of
me.
course.
Trust me.
We've backed every wrong horse over
Oh,
the
Well,
years.
speak for yourselves. I'm a PC man.
This is
Well,
true.
I'm a
You
PC.
backed
I'm an everything man. What are you talking about? I back all horses, baby. All
Yeah.
right, so we got the Xbox stuff done. Let's go on to Ubisoft Forward, which is coming on this Sunday, the 12th of July. Do you have any hot predictions for that?
I came prepared with a list. Would you like to
Uh-oh.
hear my list?
No.
Do it.
Okay, well, you're gonna have to hear it anyways. And this list is not a list of predictions. Rather, I was thinking about Ubisoft, who I tend to not really enjoy their conferences at all because they tend to be kind of predictable. But I feel like in the same way that when Nintendo has their direct, there's almost like a list of questions like, will they talk about Metroid Prime? No.
No.
Okay, will they talk about Bayonetta 3? No. Will they talk about Shin Megami Tensei 5? No. It's a little bit like that, but for Ubisoft, it's that, but it's the same names every single year. So I prepared a list, and I'm going to ask you and Setzer if you have any hot predictions on any of these. What if you think these things will appear? So I will start with what I think is a softball. Do you think they will mention the name Beyond Good and Evil 2?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm surprised by the answer. Explain.
Well, because it came back like I think last year or the year before
Well,
that.
I recognize that, but it wasn't last year. It's been at least 2 or 3 years since Joseph Gordon-Levitt came out on the stage and said, "Send me your art for free, and I'll put it in this game."
Well,
I think it's about due.
yeah, and they revealed more of it where it shows that it really doesn't look at all like Beyond Good and Evil 1. So
Well, right, and that's what I felt like they brought that name up and they said, "Hey, it's back. Remember Beyond Good and Evil 2? Well, we brought it back, but now there's a swearing monkey," and people were like, "Well, I don't really know about this. This isn't the tone I wanted from a new Beyond Good and Evil." And then as they showed more and more, I felt like it just hit with a bit of a thud. I think the reception was such, and especially with, I mentioned offhand the Joseph Gordon-Levitt thing, which honestly at this point is so long ago, I don't have a perfect memory of it. And if I was more professional, I'd have notes about exactly what it was. But I believe it was this whole idea that they were going to crowdsource a lot of the art assets for the game. And so that too really turned people off because they're like, oh, so you want to make a bunch of artists provide free content for your game and not compensate them in any way.
Wasn't that the Mega Man Legends 3 approach?
No,
Maybe,
that was more. We'll let you vote on which art assets we make actually get in the game.
And then we'll cancel it because there wasn't enough interest.
yes, and but I
We'll
was just
cancel it because they
wondering.
hate me.
It's
Yeah,
true.
that's true. That's true. I was just wondering, like, Beyond Good and Evil 2, the first ever teaser was gotta be like a million years ago at this point. They had some dumb little teaser image of Jade and that pig sitting under an umbrella. And then, you had a decade later, they showed this, and I was wondering, is this game gonna go back into the back burner again? Like, how many games get revived and then go back into the hole again before actually coming out? So I'm
Well,
surprised you both said yes.
well, I'm just gonna say, like, if they're not gonna make it like Beyond Good and Evil 1, they should just abandon ship right now.
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge of reviving a franchise in the first place. We talked a little bit about how people's expectations of remakes or remasters may not necessarily align with, playing a game that is in fact from 20 years ago. I think that a revival is the same problem. You're going to see people who are going to be purists and they do want that Beyond Good and Evil experience from, I think that game came out in like 2002, 2003.
I think it was 2003 or 4. It was that PS2 GameCube early cycle.
Right. And
Early.
so I can't really blame Ubisoft for trying to put a new spin on it. That being said, I think that the other danger is a game that's in development too long is going to feel dated when it comes out.
I'm surprised by both of your reactions. So I'm going to continue on my list and hopefully not be surprised, because that really made me feel sad that you didn't agree with me. But anyways, next on the list, do you think, this is always brought up every single year, do you think they will announce or tease a new Splinter Cell?
No.
No.
Okay, good. Well, me either. But going on, this one is going to hit a little close to home, and I think Derek knows exactly where this is going.
The answer is no.
Uh-oh.
Do you think they will announce or tease a new Prince of Persia
No.
game?
No.
Prince of Persia's so dead. They're
Do I count mobile games? Can you count mobile games?
no.
Oh no.
No, you'll never see another Prince of Persia game. They have those. They're called Assassin's Creed.
Oh,
Never say never, but
I'm
I
saying
will
never.
say this.
Oh,
I don't think we're going to see any big surprises. I don't think we're going to see any big, reveals. I think we'll see continuation. I think we'll see continuity.
yeah, I think Far Cry was probably their big reveal, but because PSN is like the world's leakiest ship, that didn't end up happening, and they got outed by that reveal. I'm sure they're gonna spend, I don't know how long it's supposed to be, probably an hour if I had to guess. But they have to finally show what this new Assassin's Creed looks like, which I'm gonna guess looks like the last Assassin's Creed but with Vikings. They're gonna talk more about this Watch Dogs game where you can allegedly control every NPC. They've got their token Just Dance segment. I mean, what else is there? And Far Cry, of course.
You got
So
Rayman.
Well, they're not gonna do anything with Rayman. What are they gonna do with Rayman? Trot him out?
He's back again.
If
Coming to Smash.
listen,
For real
if they
this
trot
time.
out, if they trot out Rayman, they better trot out Prince of Persia. I don't care what form it's in. Even just an acknowledgement, like even just a remaster of the 3 games from the PS2 generation would be enough for me at this point.
We are launching Rayman 3 on the Xbox One Series X. Or Rayman 2 gets ported again.
They have a Rayman 3, Derek.
I said, yes, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
It's being ported.
sorry.
You
Oh,
dumbass.
yes, 'cause well, it would be silly if they made a new Rayman game. It just wouldn't make any sense.
Well, now that you mentioned Rayman, it is the age of the remaster. The PS1, PS2
Oh.
era console
Is
mascot
it time-
remaster.
Is it time to remaster Rayman 2?
Again?
So,
How many platforms can we put this game on?
Oh,
This-
get hype.
This and Skyrim and GTA 5 in a battle to the death to dominate platform history. Oh man, you've really. Oh, I hope they show that.
That's a good out of nowhere guess.
It's not right, but it's my favorite prediction.
My prediction is that it'll be a boring show.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't have much energy for Assassin's Creed, especially since you mentioned that they have a Prince of Persia and it's called Assassin's Creed. And I've been reminded several times recently that a lot of people do view Assassin's Creed as a continuation of Prince of Persia, and they're wrong, but neither here nor there. And I don't have much juice for Watch Dogs either.
Well,
And
the next good Watch Dogs they make will be the first good one. So
yeah, I don't know that that constitutes a hot take. I know that Watch Dogs 2 was received better, but I know Watch Dogs
let
1
me just put
was.
it this way: Watch Dogs 2 was received better for the same reason Wolfenstein 2 is considered a good game. Yes,
Wolfenstein 1 was excellent. Oh, oh, sorry. I see. I got you.
picking up what I'm putting down.
How naive. Yes, no, I see.
Well, I think we've covered Ubisoft here. So let's move on to another E3 style show, one that's already happened, so no predictions necessary. Saturday, which is the day we're recording, Devolver Digital had their yearly E3 style stream for this not E3 year. They revealed a few things. I don't know if any of these are official reveals or not. But they did reveal trailers. They had Shadow Warriors 3, which looks kind of interesting. It's like an over-the-top shooter game set in Japan. It looks like.
It looked like Doom. Looked
Yeah,
like yes.
looked all right. Fall Guys, which is a battle royale sort of game, but it doesn't look like a cookie cutter battle royale. If you've ever seen the show Ninja Warrior, it looks kind of like that, but with like a Splatoon style soundtrack. I believe that Chesten even said he felt like the music was ripped straight from Splatoon.
Yeah, it might have just been, listening to it after. It wasn't a conference I watched when it happened. I went back and watched the trailers at a time, and when I saw the art style, I was like, well, it kind of, looks like a game that would belong on the Switch. Perhaps it's not on the Switch, but it looked like it belonged on it. And then when I started it, it was just that kind of cutesy, and the soundtrack had, it had a fictional language of sorts, singing in a very hip, modern, electric style, and it just immediately sent up my Splatoon signals, which don't usually get thrown up these days.
Yeah, much like you, I didn't watch the show. I just watched the trailers. That's because I feel like the Devolver show runs a little longer than it should because it's just a comedy conference, and I feel like the comedy is not that funny.
A
Yeah,
little too much.
agreed.
It's a little wet.
I think people that like it kind of just do so they can fit in on social media. So it's
I'm
not for me.
I confess I skimmed it just to get to the trailers. I have to say I've never really been taken with the Devolver show. I think that it's funny in the sense that it's subversive,
Yes.
but that being said, that is not necessarily meritorious in every execution. I think that the sketch comedy definitely grows long in the tooth, like you
It
said.
does. It takes way too long.
It's
Brevity is the soul of wit, as they say.
and it's so in your face. Like
Yeah.
there's no question of what their angle is with their conference.
Well, this will get me some hate probably, but I feel like if you remember, like back in season 1 of Rick and Morty, where it was all the cool
Uh-oh.
people you knew that watched it, and it was before it caught on and became like all the dopey people going to Walmart for their Szechuan sauce. I feel like the Devolver conferences are kind of like that. If Rick and Morty never caught on, all the cool people like it, but it's just it's there. It's all right.
It's funny you say that because that was actually what I was gonna say. I think I've seen one episode of Rick and Morty and wasn't impressed, and I really consider that to be in the same wheelhouse as the Devolver Digital Conference. So
Alright.
in that regard, I can see why they have an audience, but
Well, it's
I'm not
Rick
really
and
part
Morty
of
for
it.
people that are too embarrassed to publicly admit they like Rick and Morty because it has become kind of like they're fans or idiots sort of thing. But that's neither here nor there. That's just me complaining about comedy, I suppose. What else was at the show was Carry On, which comes out July 23rd. It looks like what they dub it as a reverse horror game. So what it looks like to me from the trailer I watched is that it's like kind of like a Metroidvania but in reverse. where you're playing
Yes.
as the
Yeah.
the
That is
SAX
exactly
or
what I
whatever.
thought. And that was like when I first saw the trailer, because you had mentioned when before, because I was kind of like, oh, I don't really want to watch this or the trailers, should I? And you said, oh, this one game seems really up your alley. And so when I first saw it start, I saw this, science fiction. To me, it looked like a Metroidvania. I was like, what's he trying to say about me? Do you think I have a type that I'm just gonna fall for any science fiction Metroidvania? Which is probably true. But then when the creatures started to burst out, it immediately sent me back to this game from 2016. Do you remember Inside? Do either of you remember that game?
I remember it.
Heard of it,
Okay.
never played it.
So it was, do you remember Limbo?
Yes.
Heard of it, never played it.
Okay, well I hated Limbo, but Inside was kind of a similar game. It was very atmospheric platformer where the gameplay was really secondary. You were there for the ambiance, so to speak. And at the end of that game, and this is a spoiler for a 4-year-old game, so if you have not played this game from 4 years ago, skip forward about a minute. So at the end of that game, you're wandering through this facility and you get absorbed into this giant ball of flesh that is mostly made of arms and legs, and it is just this like total out of nowhere moment. And the rest of the game, you play as this flesh blob, and you are just rolling over all the people in the facility. You are going through all of these crazy puzzles, and at the time playing it, I had two thoughts. One, the dominant thought was, what on earth is going on here? This makes no sense. I don't understand what's happening narratively. And then the other thought was, despite playing as a flesh blob with all these different appendages, it controls really well and it's really fun to play as because you had these physics puzzles and you'd be thinking, oh man, I have like 30 arms. It's going to be hard to do all this stuff. But then as you're doing it, you're like, oh, this all feels really good. And I could play a whole game like this. And then I saw this trailer and I thought, that's it. They made a game where you play the entire time as the flesh blob from Inside. So I'm way in on this game. Way in.
Yeah, I'll say of all the games at Devolver's conference, this was the only one that really got my attention, and I don't typically like 2D games all that much.
Yeah, it looks it looks very fresh, and I'm glad it's coming to Game Pass also, so I can give it a little try-zy before I buy-zy, so to speak. What else was there was Serious Sam 4,
Oh man.
which I can't believe they're still making Serious Sams. It feels like, I don't know, like the alternate universe Duke Nukem to me.
When I saw the Serious Sam 4 trailer, I thought this looks like a Serious Sam ripoff, like a Unity asset flip trying to mock or emulate Serious Sam. And then they revealed, like the title drop, Serious Sam 4, and I thought how embarrassing that they're still trying to, trot this out. Do you know if this is a mobile game or something?
It didn't look like a mobile game to me. The
I mean,
graphics were
the graphics
too
are
good.
bad.
Well, the graphics are bad, but I think they're a step above mobile.
I don't know.
That's not necessarily
these
true. Mobile
days.
can put out some good graphics. It's just,
Mhm.
I mean, it would be more of, did you see on-screen touch controls during the Serious Sam demo?
They wouldn't do
It's a
that because that would
trailer.
kill all
They don't
hype.
have to put the controls on there.
No, it's true. I don't think it's mobile. I think I did
I
not.
think it's a
I'll
budget
admit,
game.
I'll admit, I skipped that trailer because I saw the name and said I don't care. But I believe it is a PC and
You
other
gotta be
It's
platform
kidding
everything.
game.
me. This is like when I thought that Kingdom Hearts game was gonna be a mobile game.
Well, you're you're out of your element, I'm afraid. The Kingdom
Guess
Hearts game
so.
rules.
They would never deign to put a Kingdom Hearts game with crucial story content on a mobile device, Setzer.
Not
Oh
for
yeah.
the third, fourth time at least.
I mean, they
No,
want to do it
no.
again.
Once or twice, maybe. But 3 or 4 times, no.
How dare you bully me for my favorite franchise? It's not very cool.
Are we starting the bad game segment now?
No.
But
And Kingdom Hearts is not bad. How dare you? So there's also something called Allegia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's for the Switch and PC. It has the generic indie game pixel look, so it didn't interest me in that regard.
It's more of like a, to me, I don't know, I didn't have one, so I can't speak to this, but it looked more like Commodore, whereas most indie games go for NES.
Yes,
So
I
it's at
agree. It didn't
least
look like
different
NES.
in that regard.
But I mean, the gameplay looked kind of neat. It looked kind of like the
Yeah.
old school Prince of Persia.
Yeah, it didn't do much for me personally, but I mean,
Same.
I think it's one of those things that maybe I could see in whenever it ends up coming out, I could see it being the kind of game that people are really into and then I'm drawn to try out because it's just hard to show what it is in a little trailer.
Well, yeah, I agree. It's probably something you would need to experience. Like I feel like Celeste is similar,
Yeah,
where you're
well,
not going to get
yeah,
what you need out of that game from just watching a trailer.
right. And that kind of game, that art style, that just that, carry on Metroidvania in reverse. So the concept is right there. It sells you. This is a 2D action game of some sort, and there's like 1,000 of those. So I'm gonna need to hear some word of mouth before I'm in on it.
Fair. And the last thing they showed was the Devolver Land Expo, which is like an interactive advertisement, what it sounds like. It's free to play on Steam. It seems like a shooter where you take out like various mascots from all the games they showed at this event. I did not have time to play it, so I can't comment on it, but it's out and it's free. And I think it's kind of a interesting approach to advertising because you're getting exposure to these characters that you're not familiar with. And I don't know, it's kind of neat.
I don't know. Always the cynic. I think that this is just a way to trick Rick and Morty fans into engaging with an advertisement in the first place.
I don't disagree with that. This is definitely just an advertisement. But I if I'm going to be advertised to, I'd rather it be like via a game than like I'm browsing through social media and I see a promoted tweet or something.
See, I would rather just not be advertised to at all.
Well, me neither, so I've got ad block. But still, I appreciate that they're trying something different.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's the strength of their show. For whatever, I wouldn't say most of these games did not appeal to me, but I always at least give them somewhat of an ear because they have a tendency to publish some more interesting indie games. They published some of my favorites over the past several years, so it is in their wheelhouse to produce something that is unique.
Okay, let me say it like this. I would take this over a crossover event in a game I like, because at least I have control whether I can engage with it or not.
Yeah, but what if
That's
that
fair.
crossover involved Square Enix and Disney?
Well, you know,
Then he can't help
I
himself.
can't help it. I gotta indulge. I gotta buy. I gotta buy all that Frozen merch. There was one other thing Devolver had, and it was a screenshot, one single screenshot of No More Heroes 3, I believe after the credits rolled.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I heard about that.
I do not give a shit about screenshots or logos anymore. It's like when Nintendo won E3 by having a logo of Metroid Prime 4, which is insane. But as we know, that was a mistake because we have not seen hide nor hair of that game since. I think it's cool No More Heroes 3 is being developed, but I will not have anything positive to say about it until I see it.
I think that's supposed to come out this year, though.
Well, we'll see.
I
I love No More Heroes. I think both those games are great. So
Yes, you do.
So I will be down for when it comes out, but I'm not going to get excited for a screenshot. Not again. So moving on, we have Nintendo news. Oh boy. Still no Direct because they're just holding out forever, I
Oh, help us.
guess. But it was revealed that the new Paper Mario does not have experience points. Again.
Oh no. Oh my gosh.
So how does this make you feel?
So, here's another
Oh.
hot take.
Mm.
I've not played a Paper Mario game ever. On the face of it, I'm not bothered by this. I play a lot more tabletop RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons, that sort of thing, though I don't really play D&D specifically anymore. And what fascinates me about video games in relation to tabletop games is the total unquestioning acceptance of experience points as a good thing. You'll notice most video games, you get experience for killing monsters or, through fighting, we'll say.
Yes.
That wasn't always the case in the tabletop RPGs that a lot of these video games are modeled after. The original D&D, there was a lot more emphasis on getting experience for treasure, right? And nowadays, you see a lot of tabletop games move to the model of, you really level up when the GM decides it, right? In a nutshell, right? So I'm not really bothered by the idea of an RPG without experience points because it's it's arbitrary. We talked a couple weeks ago about time wasters in games, and I think our XP is a total time waster.
Can I latch on to your hot take and
No.
concur, but for different reasons? Because I
Yeah.
don't have the same Dungeons and Dragons experience. I mean, I've played it, but poorly, and not in a long time. It's so first I should mention that it actually isn't an RPG. It's never been advertised as such this time. If you even look at the listing, the genre is action and adventure, and I think
Uh,
the past two have also been labeled as such. So, you have that. So the lack of experience points on its face shouldn't be that surprising. I think the thing with this game, speaking to your unquestioning acceptance of experience points within the community, is that this is the actually the fourth straight Paper Mario that isn't just a carbon copy of the Thousand Year Door, which was a beloved game on the GameCube, which had a lot of traditional RPG elements. And the franchise has, for a long time, moved beyond that. But this time, in the lead up to this game's unveiling, a lot of the leaks pointed to people within Nintendo calling this a traditional Paper Mario. So when the first trailer came out and it didn't have a lot of those things, people were very skeptical. And then as more and more things came out, this was kind of like the one last thing that people are waiting, especially Thousand Year Door fans. They were just waiting for this to be confirmed so they could just jump on this game. And so when this happened, they just jumped. But I think they should just get over it. I think it's been pretty clear that this isn't the Thousand Year Door. And I think that the experience points are just kind of a weird thing to cling on to because they are, in a lot of ways, just a time waster. And I know that the argument for them, especially with this game, would be that why would you even engage in battle if not to get experience points? And to me, that just seems like a weird argument because if you're only engaging in the battle because you're going to get some kind of pithy little reward like experience points that are ultimately just a time waster, then is it really even that great of a mechanic to begin with? Like, I don't know. That's kind of
exactly.
where my head was at.
Exactly. How much of your enjoyment of the Thousand Year Door was derived from the fact that you got experience points?
Me personally, like that game, when I think about my time with it, it was it was the art style, very, it was like the first game, but a lot sharper because it was on a new platform. It was the writing, which was very funny. It was the worlds you went to. It was the characters, the experience points, the turn-based battles. Like, I mean, I like that stuff, but that was not the thing that brought me in. It was something I put up with to get to the rest.
Exactly, and that kind of parallels the evolution we see in tabletop games where, think of experience points as an incentive, right, for what the designer wants the player to do in the game. The question becomes, is Paper Mario about battling? And that's a legitimate question coming from me, because like I said, I've never played it. But my impression has always been it's more about the funny story and characters and, playing along with that, as opposed to it's about playing to fight and have the RPG
Yeah,
combat.
I think that's always been the case. I mean, I love those first two games. And then the third game that came along, Super Paper Mario, which was itself a diversion. I think it did have experience points, but it
It
was,
did.
instead of being turn-based, it was a side-scrolling action game for the most part. And so it totally flipped the script on its head, and fans were, totally against it then. But for me, as someone who liked those first two games, I was like, well, it still has that art style. It still has the charming writing. You had some really fun characters. Like, I didn't see the hubbub, and I know Sticker Star and Color Splash, the last two games, left a really sour taste in people's mouth. I think in a lot of cases the writing was still pleasant and the art was still there, but a lot of the characters and stuff on the side were missing. And I understand that with this new game, some of that is still true. There's an abundance of very generic looking Mario characters, but I watched the Treehouse, which we'll talk about pretty soon, and I watched some other footage from it, and I've read some previews, and it sounds like the writing is charming. The the world is more open than it has been in recent games, so you can explore like the things that I think about looking back on my childhood enjoying Paper Mario. I look at this game and I say, yeah, I mean that stuff is still there. Would I like the turn-based combat to be back? I mean, I guess I did enjoy it, but
Still
it's
there.
hardly a linchpin.
Okay, so I'm gonna be the one that diverges from you guys. I agree with the points you're making about Thousand Year Door fans needing to move on. I do not necessarily think you need to make a Thousand Year Door 2. My favorite things about that game were the characters and the like, specifically the different styles of NPCs from the Mushroom Kingdom. I enjoyed like seeing like, the Delfinos with their mobster sunglasses and stuff. And so with the newer Paper Marios, you get that flavor taken away. So that really bugs me. I do not like the generic Toads and Koopas being the bulk of NPCs in those games. I'm with you guys. The writing is the main focus, and I feel like that'll probably still be solid. But here's my qualms with the no EXP thing. I don't feel like there's a lot to do in these Paper Mario games other than fight and maybe solve puzzles. So it seems like the reward for fighting is money, which you just get to make yourself better at fighting, I suppose. So my problem here though is like why why fight if there's no reason to? At some point it just becomes I'm just playing this game to walk and enjoy the world, which is fine, but it feels like fighting is an afterthought. So maybe for future Paper Marios, they should consider whether they even need combat. Maybe
Well,
Paper Mario would be better suited as like a puzzle solving game.
did you watch the Treehouse?
No.
So, I mean, I watched most of it. I believe I might have missed the beginning, but looking at the game, the last two Sticker Star and Color Splash, which full disclosure did not play, but my understanding of those is that they were more level based, like very old fashioned Mario games. I know Color Splash was. I don't know about Sticker Star. Derek, you played Sticker Star. Was
That
it
is
level
level
based?
based.
Okay. So this is not level based. This is an open world. So there in that sense already there's a lot more exploration focus because you're not on these linear corridor levels. You are in these big open fields with, different things to do, different characters to see here and there. I mean, it looked like from the little bit I saw, there was just a lot of side activities, a lot of like things to find and explore along the way. It looked like there were plenty of things besides battling that you could engage in. And, the gameplay itself, like the battling without experience points could seem superfluous. Like, why would you do it? But like I said, there's a lot more going on. And then, it just seems like there is some variety. Like, they showed the boss battles, and those are totally different from the rest of the encounters, which looked like it made them a little more interesting than just another traditional turn-based RPG boss fight like you would have gotten in Thousand Year Door. After going through a dungeon full of turn-based battles, you get to one bigger turn-based battle that just takes longer and has more hit points. And this looked like, maybe do you need to fight every shy guy on the way there? No. But there was enough like incentive to explore and enough incentive waiting for you at the end that it seemed like it could be a very compelling adventure game.
Well, my thing
Well
is
said.
like I feel like they're treating the combat like it's trivial. So as a player,
Yeah.
I see it being treated like that, and I'm thinking, why should I engage ever?
Well, I think that's true, and you don't have to. I'm saying there's enough there, outside of the combat that like watching the battle, like the footage, they did run away from, like they just deliberately would avoid battles, kind of like you would in an old school platformer. You think about Mario, you think about Sonic. I mean, you could engage with all the enemies, but a lot of times it was like, well, that's just trivial. What's the point? I don't really get anything from it. I'm here for this or that experience. In Sonic, I'm here for the sense of speed, and Mario, I'm here for the precision platforming. And in this game, I'd say you're here for the writing, and so, you'll have to battle sometimes. I'm sure the story will call for it for you to battle, but if you're just out in the field, you can just look to the side and say, well, I don't really want to fight those guys right now. I want to keep up with the pace of exploring this world. It's a little bit like Pokemon. I mentioned, when we were talking about Pokemon earlier, with Shield, I think one of the strong suits is by not having those turn-based, or not turn-based, not by not having random encounters, you as the player have some element of choice where it's like, okay, in Pokemon it's just battle, 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 constant battle. And that's not the only reason you're there. A lot of times you're there to explore the world, to do all these different things, even though Shield doesn't offer a whole lot of that. but you can look over to the side and say, right now, I don't really want to mess with that. I'm here for this or that. Same thing in this Paper Mario. I don't really want to mess with these random encounters or these turn-based battles. I'm just going to continue to explore and try to find these paper toads, or I'm
I
going to
understand.
try and do this confetti side quest or what have you.
I understand what you're saying, but at some point, if you're just avoiding battles like purposefully, combat becomes a punishment. And I feel like in a game that features heavy amounts of combat, you don't want to correlate like a large portion of your game as being a punishment.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but we don't know how much of the game it takes up. My impression is not much because I mean, I saw some battles, but so the thing about these battles is that they are turn-based, but you think of like classic Paper Mario, there's a lot of time because it's a turn-based battle system. There's a lot of time spent looking at the menu, analyzing what choice you want to make, picking your items, this and that. Each battle is going to be like a minute or so, and it's going to stop the flow of your exploring. This game, it seemed very quick. Like you have 30 seconds to line up your enemies in a circle grid, which is their new mechanic for the battling. But then once that happens, the battle just like goes like that. And yeah, I've read previews from different sites that say if you do this puzzle element right with this grid, the battling is going to be over so quick that it's not really going to have much time to interrupt your flow. So
Then why
I
even
don't
have
think
it?
it's well, I mean, that's a valid question. I think that's a valid question. I'm not necessarily defending the existence of it so much as I am saying that this experience point system or lack thereof, one, not surprising, but two, not that big of a deal to me.
No, I'm willing to give it a chance. I don't
Yeah,
need
and
it to just be a thousand year door
yeah,
clone.
and that's good. I think I don't want to paint you into that corner because I know you're not like the people that you see in every single tweet by Nintendo about this game, where they are just like desperately pleading with Nintendo, or trying to sign petitions to get them to remaster Thousand Year Door because this new game is a disgrace
Don't
to
want that
Paper
either.
Mario, even though Paper Mario hasn't been Thousand Year Door in a decade and a half, all these crazy things. To those people, I want to say, you know, I I think I've been more sympathetic with the past games like Color Splash and Sticker Star, but now like there is an alternative because there's this new game that was very well received on Steam. Recently came to consoles called Bug Fables, which from what I understand is literally the Thousand Year Door,
You're never
but
gonna get
it's
people
new.
onto a non Mario version of that.
Well, that
Part of it's
is
the
it.
characters.
They're talking about mechanics that they want, and this game is
All
offering
right,
those
but you have to
mechanics.
understand there's a reason Smash clones are all failures. The thing is, like, part
Bad
of the
games you
appeal of
love.
Smash Brothers is like the characters, and the gameplay is good, but that's only part of the puzzle. Thousand Year Door has good gameplay, but if it didn't have the Mario characters, it would just be a footnote in the GameCube history, I think. So
Okay,
something like that is not going to answer what people want.
well, we have a game for those people. It's called The
Oh,
Thousand Year Door.
thank you, Don Metric.
So I would sell those people if you are so tied to the idea that Paper Mario has to be this, and you can't accept that another game can have the same mechanics without Mario, then go back, buy a GameCube, and find a way to play Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. And you know what? It's still fun.
Still
It still
great.
has all the characters you remember. You'll love it. Move on.
Yeah, I agree. No need
You can
to.
even get XP points all you like.
That's right. You can get your little experience points so you can have your little virtual Skinner box and just keep going. It's there for you. Don't worry.
So I will just wrap it up by saying I am willing to give it a shot. I am a little skeptical, but if they can make something I like, I will fully admit that my skepticism was misplaced. Moving on. This is basically something that me and Cheston care about, but they're finally putting Donkey Kong Country on Nintendo Switch Online. Fuck yes. Uh, we love this game. I think Donkey Kong Country is a critically an underrated platformer. I believe the fans all like it, the Nintendo fan base, but I feel like Donkey Kong Country is kind of seen as second tier, and I don't agree with that. So I'm happy to see it launched on Nintendo Switch Online.
It's a very important game to Nintendo's history. So just on that grounds alone, it is well overdue to be on this platform, which I wanted to mention, I've just been thinking about this ever since they announced this. This is the all-time greatest, most obvious act of stretching I have ever seen in the game industry, with Nintendo releasing this Super Nintendo emulation platform on the Switch, and just now, after 10 months, adding Donkey Kong Country, one of the cornerstone games of that platform. Bravo.
They're
It is a masterclass in stalling.
It is weird because if you look at the Super Nintendo games they have on the service, they are missing a lot of classics. Like they
Well,
don't
I
have.
mean, I don't know. Are they missing a lot? I mean, they're missing all the Donkey Kong countries. They're missing Earthbound.
Yes,
I mean,
that's what I'm
obviously
talking about.
they're missing some third party stuff which they're not gonna get because now those third parties sell those games on their own. But I think, it's just been funny to watch. Like they started it off with a bang, which they did with the NES as well. It was like, hey, Link to the Past, Mario World, Super Metroid, all there on your Switch today. Now, go download it. But then, after that debut, it was like 3 months of silence. And you're like, whoa, they're gonna have Donkey Kong Country around the corner. I know it. We were talking about this back in January, and they're like, have you all ever heard of Poppin' Twinbee? And
No.
everybody was like, oh, okay, well, hold on for Donkey Kong Country. And then 3 months later, have you heard of Super Tennis?
Okay, that was a bad addition because they have already two tennis games on there. So like, here's another one, a third.
Not enough tennis games. And
Yeah.
then finally, this time, Donkey Kong Country, but they're still stalling because everybody's there like, what about 2? What about 3? What about Earthbound? And they're like, what about Natsume Classic Wrestling?
Now, listen, I appreciate them going deep cut with the Super Nintendo library because most people have experience with the classics. But at the
Yes,
same
but they're
time,
clearly just doing it to fill time.
well, yes, because I thought the N64 was going to come out this year, but given what the SNES is still missing, there's just no chance. I mostly just want N64 again.
Well, I think, they did the Super Nintendo a year after the NES and the platform itself, their online platform launched.
Right.
And so Super Nintendo was around the time people were theoretically resubscribing. My guess is that this time they won't do 64, but they will have, I don't know,
Game
maybe Super
Boy.
Mario RPG.
Oh, yeah, it's missing. That's true.
That could be something that the people, the thousand-year door people of all people,
We
would see that, and they take their Switches out of the dumpster
we have
for that
we
one
we had an exhaustive talk on Mario RPGs. I will save everyone for my hot Super Mario RPG takes, but trust me, I have them.
game.
I'll just say baby's first RPG and leave it at that.
Gosh, speaking of things for babies, there was a huge announcement. If I were to ask you, Setzer and Derek, what game you would want to be announced at a Nintendo
Bakugan.
conference?
You bastard!
Oh, well, Setzer, do
You
I
got your
have some
wish.
great news for you. Speaking of Nintendo Masterclasses, stalling, the other Nintendo Masterclass, disappointment. On, I believe it was Thursday, they put out a tweet. They said, there's going to be a treehouse. We're going to show Paper Mario. And then a brand new game from Way Forward. And the internet, because they are so starved for a new Nintendo Direct and new Nintendo announcements, just immediately went up in flames. Derek thought there'd be a new Wario Land by Way Forward. Other people were thinking Metroid because they always think Metroid, even though Nintendo doesn't care about Metroid. And all of these other games, I'm sure someone out there said Sin and Punishment quietly to themselves.
So they had to send
And
some intern out to be like, oh, by the way, it's not first party.
yes. So the social media intern said, okay, it's a third party. It's based on a third party IP. So then that doesn't quell the flames because then you think Way Forward, makers of Shantae, makers of Contra 4, they helped develop the Bloodstain Ritual of the Night. You had people like me thinking, oh my gosh, are they going to reveal a new Castlevania because Konami's too lazy? And that was the mindset I was in. At the end of this Paper Mario stream, they said, okay, we're going to go to break-in. When we come back, we are going to reveal Way Forward's new game. And so they come back from the break and they go, all right, we're going to show it. And they do that, every Switch trailer starts with that snap. You hear the Switch and you're like, oh man, I'm about to see something. And then you see these crummy, secondhand looking anime characters, and you're just
Like
at
this
this
guy
point
at
you're so
6.
at this point you're so desperate you're thinking, oh maybe it's Yokai Watch. And then you see spinning blades and you hear the word Bakugan and I I just immediately reflexively just grabbed my remote and turned the TV off. To which my wife said, "Are you done watching this?" And I said, "Yes." And then I sent Derek some texts of just a unending string of laughter because man, I'm sure maybe this game will be cool. Way Forward has quite the pedigree, but boy, does that seem like the worst timing for that debut ever.
Well, it's
But
funny
it
because
it
Nintendo
was funny.
fanboys were like quick to do damage control for Way Forward because they would be like, well, Way Forward has a long, rich history of licensed games.
That they do. I think if it had been a Beyblade game, I think the reception would have been a little bit better. Maybe even Robopon, but Bakugan, I just think missed the mark.
Do kids like Bakugan?
I
I
don't know.
don't know. I have never seen a child with is it a Bakugan? I don't really
I,
know much about Bakugan. I think you spin the blade. Does that let it rip, or is that
Octopi?
Beyblade?
I don't
Beyblade's
know.
the tops. Bakugan is like
I think
little
I think Bakugan is
spheres.
tops. Spheres?
Yeah, they're like robots that fold into spheres or something. My little brother used to like Bakugan, but that was a long time ago.
I agree. The Way Forward announcement is hilarious. It's just insane. Like,
It's
where's
just
our
fun. In these trying times where nobody can be united on anything, there's nothing like a good Nintendo disappointment to really bring the whole family together.
This brings us to a topic that we held off on. This is our final topic of the week. It was supposed to be talked about last week, but Setzer decided to go off to, I don't know, the middle of nowhere for a while. So this is games that are bad that we actually enjoy. I will kick us off because I immediately said Sonic 06, and you chastised me for saying, because, it's like, oh, it's an ironic joy, which is true. So let me bring a different 3D Sonic game with Chesten accurately picked out in our little tab that I'm going to talk about a 3D Sonic
I
game for
mean, I
this.
have a list. I have a list of games you should probably talk about, but I'll let you handle it.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm leading off with Sonic Forces, a game that is completely critically reviled. And I do not understand why. I think Sonic Forces is a delightful little game. It is about 2 hours long, which might be why it's critically reviled. Um, it's just a fun little 2 hours. I think all the levels are just great. The music is pretty solid. It's not like as good as a typical Sonic game, but it's not like a buggy glitch fest like Sonic 06. It's got a shitty story, but if you care about Sonic the Hedgehog stories and you're not 12 years old, you might have some problems. So I don't understand all the hate for Sonic Forces. I think it is a perfectly cromulent little game. So
I have not played it, but from what I remember, doesn't it play like Generations?
a little. It has the classic Sonic segments, but just like in Sonic
Uh,
Generations, that's the stuff I like least. I
okay, yeah,
prefer.
because the stuff in Generations, like I played that recently. That's like a fun little distraction, but if you sit there and focus on it too long, you're like, yeah, this has a lot of problems.
Well, yeah, the old Sonic levels I do not feel like represent old Sonic very well,
No, the physics are wrong.
but the new Sonic levels are a lot of fun, and it's a nice little nostalgia kick going through those old zones. But that's Generations. There's some of that in Sonic Forces too, but it's mostly it's mostly new stuff. But I just enjoy the way it plays, and even the create a character levels are kind of interesting in their own way. So it's usually on sale for like $9, which is what I bought it for, and that's what I would recommend you buy it for since it's so short. But if you've heard bad things about it and have not tried it because of that, ignore them. Just give it a shot. I think people will be pleasantly surprised.
Are you going to make a statement about Sonic Adventure 1 or 2?
Oh, this is picking on me now, huh? I love Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. Sonic Adventure 1, I will fully admit, is a bad game, but I love everything about it. It's got like this really crappy like 20 like early 2000s charm to it. Like, the lip syncing is way off. The dialogue is really corny. And this is an ironic sort of joy, but it still makes me really happy.
To your credit and in your defense, I will say that I can also get some enjoyment. I mean, there's just something about it. It's the music is so corny, and
Oh, the music's awesome. It's not corny.
gosh, you think about like Sonic Adventure 2, what a terrible, miserable pile of garbage.
I
But
love Sonic Adventure 2.
then you have Pumpkin Hill Zone, and you have that ludicrous Knuckles song that plays in the background, and you're sitting there playing this just terrible level, digging for Chaos Emeralds over this unfathomably, like, indecipherable map, and yet you can't help but smile because Knuckles is rapping about his girl Rouge the Bat.
Well,
It's
first of all,
just
Pumpkin
something.
Hill isn't even like in the bottom three of Knuckles slash Rouge stages. So the fact that you find that incomprehensible is amusing to me because like Aquatic Mine, way worse. Meteor Herd is basically like you
I've
might as well put a
blocked
gun down.
Aquatic Mine from my mind until now.
Yes. Like there are way worse levels than Pumpkin Hill. But I just like the way it plays. Like I don't have the same problems everyone else does with the controls and the camera and stuff. It's it's just a nice little throwback. It reminds me of a simpler time.
I think if you spend enough time with anything, even the worst control system, you can contort your mind in such a way that it isn't terrible. I think for me, Sonic Adventure, the problem has always been when it breaks, it is just like it never breaks like in a really like simple moment.
Hmm.
It is like always this pivotal, like I've got to hit this homing jump or I'm going to lose my last life and I'm going to have to restart this level from the first checkpoint. And every time Sonic veers in this strange shape to hit some item box several feet behind you and then falls off a cliff and you have to hear him go, "Whoa," as he falls
Get
off the
good.
stage. Well,
Yeah, simple as that.
I haven't unlocked the third eye that's going to allow me to one appreciate and two be good at these Sonic games.
I mean, hell, I was so good at Sonic Adventure 2 that like I got all the emblems to unlock the secret Green Hill Zone that was in that game, and that requires so much work that it
That
is ludicrous.
Sonic Adventure 2 is considered a bad game? I mean, I get
Well, it's
that Sonic
considered bad.
Adventure 1 gets a lot of shit, but I never seen a lot of shit for 2.
That's because it critically it is considered bad nowadays. I feel like in retrospect, a lot of your serious gamer types look at it as a joke, which kind of is if you compare it to Mario.
The
But
story definitely is.
well, yes, of course. But again, if you take a Sonic story seriously, that's your own problem. Sorry,
I
but
was just gonna mention, have you ever watched a Sonic Adventure 1 or 2 speedrun?
no.
Because those are fascinating
Oh
just
yeah, well
because
I watched the Summoning Salt video on Sonic Adventure 2 speedruns, and those were
those
really
games
interesting.
are so fundamentally
Oh,
broken
they're totally.
that the speedruns are just these amazing like stage clipping adventures where people are just warping around at light speed and you can't follow it, but you just can't help but be enraptured by what a mess these games are.
Right, I don't understand how they're doing that. Like, I think one of the Sonic Adventure 2 speed skips is like you're basically falling through an entire level to get to the ring
Well, it's
goal.
because they know someone who developed the game, and those people know better than anybody. Like, oh yeah, I just took the day off, and then, you know, I didn't think about collision detection with the floor. So,
Well, that's
in this
Sonic
part,
06's whole problem. To answer Setzer's question, though, like I feel like Sonic Adventure 2 is mostly looked as bad in retrospect, but that's also how Sonic Adventure 1 is because I remember at the time
yeah,
both games were considered pretty good. And as we've moved away from it and we recognize that the Mario platformers are like in a completely different league than the Sonic platformers. Huh?
don't you think to some extent it's like, the recent terribleness of the Sonic franchise has retroactively colored those previous games to the point that
Yes.
even people can look at even like Sonic 3 and be like, I don't think this was ever that good.
Well, I'm going to pick on journalists again real quick because you see a lot of people saying Sonic was never good, and that I vehemently disagree with.
Yeah, and
I
I think
do,
they're just colored by the fact that, Sonic and the Black Knight exists. And so they're like, oh man, this series couldn't have ever been good.
or Sonic and the Secret Rings. The
The world's greatest Smash Brothers song.
But enough picking on me and my affinity for 3D Sonic games. What about you guys?
Well, I'll say I have a lot of fond memories of Sonic Adventure 2 as well, so I think, that would count. I'm trying to think of any that aren't hot takes, because I did go through my Steam library and I realized I don't have any games on Steam or, in my PS4 library that are really considered bad, right?
I do. I got Duke Nukem Forever, baby. Multiple places.
Though I think if I had to pick a game that is not a hot take to say is bad, I think I'd go with Oninaki. This is a Square Enix Tokyo RPG Factory game. That
Oh,
came
I'm
out
out.
a couple years ago.
I'm out. Can't cite a few on the Tokyo RPG Factory. I hate those guys. Talk about
So-
conveyor belt RPGs. Oh my
Well,
god,
see,
I am
there's the
Setsuna.
thing.
Woo!
There's the thing.
It's called Tokyo RPG Factory. It's
Yeah.
not Tokyo RPG Artists.
It's,
Go ahead. Sorry.
like I said, it's not a great game. It's like I remember as I was playing it being struck by how mediocre this game is. There's a lot of really good, I don't want to say art, character design, I thought was pretty cool in the same vein that I like, Bravely Default and Bravely Second's characters. Everything else about that game feels like it came out in maybe 2001, maybe even 98. It's very atavistic. And at the same time, I couldn't help but beat the game. I was having fun. There's something about it is just very simplistically fulfilling to just run around and smash these monsters with, I played it on PC, and for reference, this game is... I'm trying to think of what would be a good point of reference for this game. It's
Well,
kind of
yeah.
like with Ruiner that I mentioned a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago. The WASD controls suck so bad in this game, but I couldn't tear myself away, and I don't know why. So I guess I liked the game to some degree,
Well,
even though it's a bad game.
what classic RPG did it rip off? Because that's all
Uh,
they do with Tokyo RPG Factory.
I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it.
Oh my gosh, it
My
must be a
first-
Saga game.
My first gut reaction is probably like the Mana games, but I know that's not totally correct.
It's Hyperdimension Neptunia.
Is it an
Oh.
action RPG?
It's an action RPG. It's not
Oh, okay.
turn-based at all.
Probably
Oh,
Mana
okay.
or Tales of.
Yeah, I could see Tails.
I
Well,
got-
does it?
But it's kind of more like a top-down Zelda, like retro
Okay.
Zelda perspective.
Well,
Right.
you know what? I respect you coming out and saying that.
Yeah.
Just because I completely despise that company. I could go off for probably hours about how much I dislike I Am Setsuna, but I won't. But
It's
trust
funny
me.
you say that because after I beat Oninaki, I saw I Am Setsuna was on sale, and I thought about buying it specifically because I remember Derek talking about this game, and I couldn't remember if you liked it or disliked it.
it's like Chrono Trigger if you're an idiot.
Somehow that's actually their advertising slogan, and they just keep getting away with it.
Like, if you people that think Chrono Cross is bad, you need to play this like Setsuna, and then you can talk to me about Chrono Cross.
Yeah, Oninaki has a time travel twist too.
Oh, baby. What about you, Cheston?
Well, I don't play bad games, so
Bullshit.
I kid. I play terrible games. So when you all mentioned this, it really made me think. I was just, you don't often think about this game being terrible when you're playing it and enjoying it. And so when I thought about it, I thought of some kind of boring examples, and that they're mostly like hindsight, where hindsight has made them worse, a little bit like the Sonic Adventures. So like people will dog on Uncharted 1, the first Uncharted, because
Because it's
it
bad.
was it's very simplistic relative to the other Uncharted games. And I still have a fondness for it because I played it when it was new and it blew my mind. And I've probably finished it 3 or 4 times since. And I have never really thought less of it. I thought about the first Assassin's Creed, which is super repetitive, but had some really interesting ideas. What with like having these big assassinations you built up to that were so cinematic, and it had this incredibly obtuse science fiction story that at the time seemed bold and promising before they just totally pulled the plug on it. And then as you were sitting here talking about Sonic Adventure, and I was trying not to have my eyes roll into the back of my head, I thought of the game that I should probably tell people that I have a liking for, because I think it's one of those games you have to know where someone stands on, because you don't want to end up at the Thanksgiving table with them arguing about it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what
it's
they
one
argue
of
about
those
at
things
Thanksgiving.
you don't want your drunk uncle showing up and defending this game. And so I'm just gonna say it on the record.
Me too.
I like Metroid Other M.
Oh my god.
Woof.
So
Stinky.
my so my defense of this game is
I have no taste.
that yes. P.S. I have no taste. So the game is reviled mostly for its story. Its story is bad. However, Metroid has never really had a good story. Its story quality has been the lack of a story, and really it's been more about the atmosphere.
You gotta get
So,
those manga nerds on your back.
that's true. But the cutscenes are they are eye rolling. They are impossible to watch. They are horribly voice acted because it's a Nintendo first party game. So they obviously have to find like the least qualified voice actors to fill those roles. In that regard, I have to confess it's a trash fire. I get it. However, the rest of the game is a very functional action adventure game. It plays like a very unique hybrid of Ninja Gaiden and Metroid. It has some very enjoyable nods to classic Metroid with some side scrolling sections. The boss fights, albeit generic, because a lot of the creature design of Metroid, like you think about old Metroid, Super Metroid, you think of some very interesting enemies. Other M doesn't really have that, but it sure is fun to shoot them. And so I found myself when I played that game, I left feeling like, yeah, the story's bad. Yeah, the creatures really aren't that interesting looking, but I had a good time with it. Overall, I didn't regret any of my time, and there was never really a point where I thought, I don't want to finish this. I was pulled to the end, like Setzer was with Oninaki, and like you were with every Sonic game under the sun. So I think Other M is probably my most egregious bad game of preference.
Remember when Samus put her thumb down in defiance? That was a pretty epic
Well,
moment.
when I was trying to think of the cutscenes, that was the first one that came to mind. So, well,
I
listen,
will
man.
acknowledge that Other M plays really well. I don't have a problem with how it plays. In
No,
some
I don't.
ways,
I don't know that many people do. It just the cutscenes are terrible.
well, okay. Do you have anything else to say about Other M?
No, there's nothing else to say about Other M. It's mostly forgettable, but I do like it.
Can we plug a game that we don't have a ton of experience with but fond memories of?
Sure.
Phantasy
Cubivore.
Star Online Episode 3 CARD Revolution.
Hell yeah! I completely back this.
Yes.
All right.
Let's
I
go.
suck at this game. I never got very far in the story mode. I loved every second of it. And I cannot tell you why. I thought... So this game came out when I was a kid. I thought it was the most insane, absurd thing I'd ever played at the time. I had played Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2. Like the action MMO game.
Mm-hmm.
I had played that already, and I picked up Episode 3 sight unseen from the GameStop. Had no clue what I was getting into. Card Revolution did not tip me off. And I popped this fucker in and thought I was going to get, I basically anticipated it would kind of be like, an expansion pack for Episode 1 and 2. No, it's so much better than Episode 1 and 2, and that's probably the hottest take I'm going to drop this week. But
That is the hottest take.
I love this game, goddamn. I
Hey.
love the goofy narrator. I love the fact that animals come out of the cards. I love the fact that it's not just a card game, you have to maneuver your guy on the board. I can't get enough.
Can you feed your mag?
I don't know if mags are in episode 3 actually. I do
Oh,
remember when feeding your mag in episode 1 and 2, I printed out like an 80-page game facts FAQ about how to feed your mag to get the proper mag for what you want. And my mom getting really upset at me for wasting all that paper on video game crap.
Uh, that I always enjoy anybody even mentioning episode 3.
yeah. This makes up for
Hmm.
your Tokyo RPG Factory blunder, so you are
Hmm.
forgiven. You
Another
you are
bad
not kicked
game.
off the show.
Now that it comes to mind, another 3 game, Dead Space 3. I like
Oh
that
wow,
game.
Oh yeah,
you
you
are
It's
do.
you are the
crap.
one.
You are the only person I know.
Yeah, it's crap. And I don't want to say it's fun with friends because, well, I definitely had more fun playing multiplayer than the single player. I did play both. I played through single player first, actually. And I don't know. It's not a good game. It's not scary like Dead Space 1 and 2 kind of are. I can't think of any time I was like scared when I played those games, but I could appreciate the effort. But here's the real twist. I played Dead Space backwards. I played Dead Space 3, then I played 2, then I played 1. And Dead Space 3 is definitely my least favorite of the 3, but it got me interested in the franchise.
Well, I can't fault you for that. I mean, that's a very. I've never heard anyone say they like Dead Space 3 before, so I will give you that.
Do anime games count as bad, or is that just a given?
It's funny you mentioned that because I'm about to make everybody lose any amount of respect they had for me
Gosh,
because
I wonder which game you were gonna mention because I had some real
I
humdingers in my.
love the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games. they
Okay, which ones are the Ultimate Ninja? Because there's like 1,000
that's
Naruto
they're
games,
the ones
and
that
actually, I was gonna throw my respect out the window because I too was gonna use a Naruto game.
Oh my god.
oh Mimya. The
Uh,
Ultimate Ninja Storm games are the ones like they retell the anime like through these really great looking cutscenes. This is actually
is
how
it
I'd
more like Tenkaichi?
it doesn't play as good as Tenkaichi in my opinion. It's a little more simplistic.
Oh
Uh,
no.
but I mean, if you want to experience the epic story of Naruto Shippuden, boy, is this how you do it. That I would recommend this over watching the anime, which I do not like. And the manga is really long, so if you like want to spend like 10 hours experiencing some Naruto, those Ultimate Ninja Storm games are great.
Oh man. So I was thinking the Naruto game I was coming back to, and you
GameCube.
might remember the name. Well, obviously. And what was the first? What was the first one called? Because
I don't remember.
in my head it's just Naruto, but like I don't think it's not necessarily a bad game. I
It
mean,
had 9 characters in it.
I thought it had 6.
Oh, it might it might have.
And that was the thing I was gonna say. Like this game, we played countless hours of this game with 6 characters, but what a money grab! Like back in that era, because it was the first game with Naruto on the cover after the anime came to North America, and so we, like sheep we are, went and got it, and it was just like hour after hour after hour. I'm gonna be Sasuke this time. Well, okay. I guess I have 5 other choices, so I'll be Zabuza? Question mark. And then you'd rotate through those 6 characters, and then you'd play it again.
And then you
And I had
unlock
a.
Rock Lee for the 7th.
That's right. You get a 7th character, and it was just mind blowing. Like what 7 characters in a fighting game? And I even enjoyed the one that was like a Smash Brothers clone
Yeah, it was
on
on the
the
PS2.
PS2. Yes. Ah, Naruto games were, they were all right.
That's why you
They
should never
weren't.
trust our opinions, though, because we are shilling Naruto games, like literal baby
Uh,
games.
And
yeah,
you were gonna
it's
kick
that.
me off the podcast.
I deserve it.
Oh man.
Like,
I was really trying to rack my brain because I know there's some real hot GameCube slams that I spent a lot of time on.
Pokemon
Nothing.
Channel you bought.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh, I didn't like that game though. That's terrible.
um,
I was gonna make you defend Diddy Kong Racing.
that's not a bad game, so that doesn't belong in this conversation. But I appreciate you trying to railroad me.
I know your soft spots.
How dare you? How dare you suggest that's a bad game?
Donkey Kong 64.
Also not bad. It's bloated, but not bad.
Yeah, yeah.
How dare you go after Rareware? I'm not going after your favorite
Man, how
companies.
dare you call them? You called them by their full Christian name.
What next? You got to talk about Grab by the Ghoulies?
I'm sorry to
talk
say
about Mischief Makers?
rare
Oh, Mischief Makers
Rareware
rules. What are you
Ltd.
Oh, yeah. I'm a bit of a fanboy. I can't lie.
Oh, I had so many GameCube games. And
I
they're
have
so
other
bad.
ones too. Like I could talk about Dot Hack, which I love.
Also
Uh,
like that game.
those are just objectively bad, but I just love the MMO feel offline. Sometimes you want to play an MMO and you don't want to pay $14.99 USD, and that's just nice to have that in your back pocket.
Well, I think you're for a bad treat because if you want to go back and play some of those games, I understand they're quite expensive, aren't they?
Well, that's what we have, emulators.
Shh.
Go on eBay and pay $400 for Part 4, the worst of the whole quadrilogy, because it has like anime titties. Oh, the worst. Imagine. I'm gonna call it now. It was fun talking about some bad games, but we'll do plenty of that in the future. Trust me, especially if our tastes. But you can reach us on Twitter at alltodaypod or via email at alltodaypodcast@gmail.com. This is Derek, and for Setzer and Chesten, so long.
Adios.
See you.